What is up, guys? This is going to be my review for Arrow Season 6, Episode 5, titled Promises Kept. The second episode of the Deathstroke two-parter episode wasn't as good as the first. It had no badass fight scenes. The dragon side story wasn't as good as last week's Vigilante story, but the flashbacks were a lot better this week, and the main story was actually really good, despite it not having any badass fight scenes. The Team Arrow story was definitely the low point of the episode. This was the first appearance of Ricardo Diaz, aka the Dragon, and I honestly was really disappointed by him and his portrayal and everything, and the way they used him. Ricardo Diaz is supposed to be one of the best fighters in the DC universe, but he had zero fight scenes, and he just used some smoke bombs and fire. He had no fight scenes. He's supposed to be one of the best fighters, and he had no fight scenes. That's really disappointing. I really hope he gets more badass in the next couple episodes, the rest of the season, because right now, in this episode, he felt like just a villain of the week drug dealer, not the main villain of the season. So as first appearances of main villains go, Ricardo Diaz's was pretty weak. And the rest of the Team Arrow story wasn't that great either. We have to see more of Diggle's Green Arrow, and his whole story is just drawn out. It just has to end already. I felt like it was resolved way too easily with Team Arrow forgiving him, which is really out of character for all of them, because usually on Arrow and the Flash and shows like this, it's really annoying when people don't forgive people for just lying a little bit. But Diggle's lie wasn't really a big lie. It actually put people in danger, so these are one of the times that it made sense for them not to forgive them, especially Wild Dog and Lila. Because Wild Dog, Diggle actually shot him. Wild Dog should not have forgiven him for that, because he could have just, if he didn't lie about not having if he didn't lie about the tremor, he probably would have been kicked off the team, which means Wild Dog never would have been shot. So I don't think Wild Dog should have forgiven him for that, and Lila shouldn't really forgive Diggle for lying to her, because they're married, and he lied to her about taking drugs, about what else? About having that tremor. So I really don't think Lila or Wild Dog should have forgiven her, and also the rest of Team Arrow just shouldn't forgive him, because it affected them. Because he lied, they were in danger. They weren't safe, except for when he took the drugs, but they didn't know that. So when he had a tremor, he was compromised, like Dinah keeps on saying. So the rest of the team was compromised. So really, they really shouldn't have forgiven him for that. Also, it's really annoying how easily the whole tremor thing was resolved, because Curtis is just gonna fix his tremor just like he fixed Felicity's back or spine or whatever it was, so she could walk again. It's just so stupid. Nobody on Team Arrow ever has to deal with long-lasting injuries, because Curtis can just magically fix them, which is so stupid. I was actually looking forward to see Diggle actually deal with his tremor, like in real life, and maybe retire as a vigilante because of that, because that just makes sense. But now Curtis is just going to magically fix them, which just takes away all consequences from anything. If Thea's in a coma, just fix her. Samantha died, just bring her back to life. That's always been a problem with Arrow, because they've brought a lot of characters back to life, like Sarah, and yeah, that's all I can remember. But just having the Lazarus Pit there was stupid, just because it takes away all consequences and all tension, because you could just bring everybody back to life. And here, it's the same thing, just without not being dead, but just injuries. If anybody ever gets injured, you could just fix them with Curtis fixing them, which is stupid. So the Team Arrow part of this episode wasn't that great, but the Deathstroke part and his flashbacks were actually really great. Not as good as last week, just because, I mean, that fight scene from last week was incredible. This week didn't have any great big Deathstroke fight scenes, or really anybody fight scenes, so it wasn't as good. But the actual story was really good, and the flashbacks were even better than they were last week. Also, these flashbacks, or this episode, gave like a purpose to last week's flashbacks, because last week the flashbacks had no purpose, but this week they did. I'll just talk about the flashbacks before the main story. So the flashbacks were really, really awesome. They showed us how, in between season 2 flashbacks and then season 1 of Arrow, season 1 of Arrow, which looks like is when Slade came back. He came back during like the season 4 flashbacks, but then he started his whole plan right in episode 1 of Arrow. That's really cool. The flashbacks in general were really, really cool, And then the main story with Joe Wilson and Deathstroke and Oliver Queen was really good. Joe Wilson was actually a really good villain. He was menacing. His connection to Deathstroke made him really cool, just because his whole arc, his whole story with Slade, it was really cool to watch. And this episode was basically the end of the Oliver Slade Wilson storyline connection, because they take their separate ways, and now Deathstroke is like not really connected to Green Arrow anymore. So I mean, this episode really like starts up a Deathstroke TV show, which I really want right now. Come on, just give us a Deathstroke TV show. But it feels like this Deathstroke TV show will be a lot less connected to Arrow and the Arrowverse than it would have been before this episode, just because Deathstroke left. He's not connected to Oliver Queen anymore. That whole thing is over. And this episode was a really fitting way to end it. It ended it perfectly. Okay, so there's something I want to talk about that happened in this episode. It's not connected to either of the stories, but it's near the end when William and Felicity are playing Injustice 2. It was hinted at that William and Oliver were playing Injustice 2 earlier, because they said they were playing a video game of just mashing buttons, and this is DC Comics, so they were probably playing Injustice 2 or Injustice, and this confirms that they were playing Injustice 2. But this does create some really big problems, because Blue Beetle was there. Blue Beetle was there. They could have just used Sub-Zero and like Hellboy or something. Oh, Hellboy hasn't appeared yet. So like Sub-Zero and Raiden. Has Raiden appeared yet? I don't know. Two non-DC characters. They probably could have done that, and then it would have still been Injustice 2, but really Mortal Kombat. But instead they used Sub-Zero and Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle is a fictional character in this universe. Is that what's going on here? Blue Beetle is a fictional character in this universe, because Ted Kord has been referenced like by name a couple times. This isn't Ted Kord, but this is Jaime Reyes. But still, this means that Blue Beetle is a fictional character in this universe. Does this mean that he's never gonna show up because he's not real? This is insane, and this might be the biggest, or this. I don't think it's the biggest Blue Beetle reference, because we've been getting some huge references to DC characters lately, like Wonder Woman with Themyscira and the Batman with Bruce Wayne. This isn't, I wouldn't say this is the biggest Blue Beetle reference, because they've referenced Ted Kord by name and also Kord Industries, but I still think this is a huge reference to Blue Beetle, and it's really weird that Blue Beetle is a fictional character in this universe. So this Injustice 2 thing is a really cool reference and Easter egg, but it just doesn't make sense, because first of all, Green Arrow and the Flash and Black Canary are actually in that game, and other characters that have appeared in this universe. But all we know right now is that Blue Beetle is in that game, so it creates a problem for us to ever have Blue Beetle in the Arrowverse, which would have been awesome. But anyway, in conclusion, this episode I'd say it was good. Deathstroke was most of the episode, so the Team Arrow thing didn't really take up more of the episode than the Deathstroke thing. So most of this episode was good. The Team Arrow part of this episode wasn't that great, but the Deathstroke part and his flashbacks were really good. So I give this episode a 9 out of 10. Let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.